Afternoon and welcome to today's Public Safety Committee hearing on mobile food vending legislation. I'm Councilmember Emmanuel V, Chair of Public Safety. I'd like to thank Director Robert Clark, the Director of Public Safety, who's joined us here today, and everyone else that is interested in this particular topic. This is a reminder that this hearing is currently live on YouTube and Facebook, and is also live and being recorded for rebroadcast on CTV, Columbus's Government Television Channel 3. The rebroadcast schedule is available at www.columbus.gov. So on November 2nd, 2022, the Safety Committee hosted a joint committee meeting with the Zoning Committee, a Part 1 public hearing over mobile food vending and noise. We heard presentations over what the current state of these topics are today and highlighted potential issues. We also heard from 15+ public speakers and received over 30 pieces of written testimony. Over the past month, this committee has worked with the Department of Public Safety and others to complete an official first draft of the proposed code amendments to the Mobile Food Vending Code that we will review today. As I said last month, Columbus is a growing, bustling city. We have hundreds of registered food trucks and food petty carts in the city and great food. But how we regulate and enforce mobile food vendors going into 2023 and beyond is a question at tonight's hearing. This public hearing, part 2 of at least 3 total overall hearings over this legislation, is for council to receive a presentation of the proposed code amendments and to hear from the public on their concerns, ideas, and questions on this draft. Columbus City Council will not see this legislation on an agenda until at least January of 2023. So that will give plenty of opportunity for additional feedback, continued conversations, and so we look forward to the dialogue here tonight and beyond. With that, I would like to welcome Kathy Collins, the Assistant Administrator for Support Services for the Department of Public Safety, who will be presenting this evening. I would also like to thank our partners from Columbus Public Health, the Department of Public Service, the City Attorney's Office, and the Columbus Division of Police for joining us here this evening to help answer any questions. I'll now turn the floor over to Kathy. Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Remy, and all the council members who eventually will get this testimony. Thank you for the invitation and opportunity to present before council. As you said, I am Kathy Collins, and I'm the Assistant Administrator of the Division of Support Services, the 3rd Division of Public Safety. I also serve as the direct supervisor over the License Enforcement Unit, which currently employs 4 license enforcement officers, and we are currently in the process to fill a 5th position. My purpose today is to brief council and interested parties on the changes to Chapter 573 in the Columbus City Code, the section involving mobile food vending. The original food vending language was passed by this council in 2015. An update to the section is long overdue as technology, geography, the number of food carts and business models have changed, and mobile food vending operations have adjusted over the years. It was time to take a comprehensive look at the chapter to clear up any loopholes, confusion, and interpretations. This process began in the late winter of 2022 and was held over the summer. The administration elected to move forward with the draft code in October, thereby resulting in these hearings. During that time, license enforcement officers changed their hours in order to spend more time following up on complaints and visited the Short North, OSU campus, and Park Street areas to determine the extent of the issues and perform enforcement. Several Friday and Saturday nights and 1 Sunday night were worked, along with representatives from the Department of Health, Division of Fire, and the Division of Police. I provided statistics at the last hearing on the number of food units on which we encountered, inspected, and performed enforcement. One thing that was very clear was that the congestion in the Short North on a weekend night is extensive, with up to 23 food carts lining the sidewalks, almost exclusively on the east side of North High Street in areas that have narrow sidewalks, vast amounts of pedestrian traffic, bumper-to-bumper parking, and high-volume traffic. Often stopping in the street to pick up and drop off rideshare customers, especially after the liquor establishments close. This experience helped shape the changes seen in this most current draft of the legislation. Let me start with a couple caveats. Licensing for mobile food vending involves two different licenses. Any mobile food vending unit operating in Columbus must obtain a mobile food vending license, regardless of if they operate on public or private property. That process involves inspections not only by our office, but by Columbus Fire and Columbus Public Health. Mobile food units that intend to operate in or on the right-of-way in Columbus must obtain an additional license, a public right-of-way license, which is an additional charge. Several of those public right-of-way locations in Columbus are regulated through a reservation system that has been in place since the Mobile Food Vending Code was enacted. I also want to emphasize that any mobile food unit operating on private property must have written permission from the property owner with the unit while it is open. In addition, these changes are being made to clarify the placement of pet-a-food carts and push carts, AKA food carts, in congestion zones, which is defined in current code. A few of these proposed changes will affect mobile food vending as a whole, but the majority involve the push cart operation in a congestion zone. I'll now outline the changes included in the proposed legislation. Under definitions, language was added to designate the Director of Public Safety as the entity responsible for the designation of both commercial zones and congestion zones, with the ability to change them as needed. A new definition, designated temporary commercial zone permit, is the document issued to a mobile food vending unit via the electronic reservation system to be used in the right-of-way as a temporary commercial zone or non-commercial zone. The term push carts and pet-a-food carts were added under the food truck industry definition. The licensing period year was changed from the middle of March to the 1st of April to be consistent with our other licensing expiration formats. Language was added to require all mobile food vendors to comply with all local and state fire codes, which did not exist when the Mobile Food Vending Code was originally created. This will allow the Division of Fire to enforce state fire codes in addition to local codes. Under the section involving the application process, the only change was to clarify that the background check for both the owner and operators must be a Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Identification background check, otherwise known as a BCI check, to be consistent with our other license policies. Under general operation, the mandate to post the permit or reservation confirmation was changed to allow the owner to have it on hand should they be asked by any inspecting departments or law enforcement. On hand includes presenting the reservation via an electronic device, such as a phone or a tablet. They don't have to have it in paper. Public right-of-way operation is allowable only while possessing a general, designated, or temporary commercial right-of-way permit. The proposed language does not allow the right-of-way operation between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. This does not apply to units operating on private property with the owner's written permission. The Director of Public Safety will be responsible for promulgating rules in the congestion zones in consultation with the Director of Public Service and the Mobile Food Vending Advisory Board. This would also apply to any congestion zone or other public right-of-way locations specifically for push carts and pet-a-food carts. Congestion zone operation for all mobile food vending units between 6 and 10 will be by reservation only. Proposed code change also defines that operation in a commercial zone public right-of-way is between 6 a.m. and 2 a.m. and in a reserved designation location. While law enforcement has always had the ability to enforce the provisions of Section 573 in code, proposed language clarifies that and gives same authority to special duty and code enforcement officers. The current reservation format will stay the same, but is being codified in code for any future potential changes in vendors. Language was added for the creation of a portal for law enforcement and code enforcement to be able to access the reservation system for verification and enforcement. The described portal has already been created and was put in place in July of this year by our current vendor. There were few changes to the Mobile Food Vending Advisory Board to streamline the process for appointment by the Director of Public Safety, removing the need for elections, reducing the number of meetings to quarterly to ensure better attendance, changing some designated seats and adding representation from the Division of Fire and Columbus Public Health. Designated seats that were changed were based upon geographical criteria such as north and south of 670, and those were made more general seats. There are predominant changes in the proposed code. There are several cleanup for grammar, term consistency, and format that handle the rest of the changes that are in there. Lastly, in response to what Chair Remy said about this proposed legislation still being a work in progress, the licensing section pledges to continue to work with council and interested parties moving forward in this process. In the end, all we want in the name of public safety are clear, understandable regulations and vendor compliance. I have asked council to delay the enforcement date on any changes until the 1st of May next year to allow licensing to educate mobile food vending units when they appear for their annual licensing and inspections in February and March of 2023. This will give us the opportunity to create written material outlining the changes to present at that time and the ability to answer their questions. Thank you again for the opportunity to present on this important topic, and I will attempt to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Assistant Director Collins. Part of this process is creating definitions and at least expounding on the definitions that may already exist. I noticed in a lot of different cities, some of them are very robust in what a mobile food preparer is versus a vendor versus, the different types of categories. As we evolve, our policy here. Could you talk a little bit about, in greater detail, what the difference between a commercial and a congestion zone is so people in the public have a better understanding what we're talking about here?
I was not, Chair Remy, I was not part of the original definition group that came up with those. My understanding is that congestion zone is basically for a location that has a lot of congestion, has a lot of businesses. I know it's defined in the code as combination of a public right-of-way, parking limitations, meter restrictions, vehicular traffic patterns, pedestrian density, and mobility issues, such that unrestricted access for mobile food vending constitutes a threat to public health and safety. A commercial zone is a geographic area that has a combination of public right-of-way access, vehicular traffic patterns, pedestrian density, and mobility options such that reasonable access for mobile food vending does not constitute a threat to public health and safety. So the big deciding factor between the two, other than maybe the amount of congestion in each one, is if it's a threat to public safety or not.
And I think in a real-world example, it's fair to say that the short north would be a congestion zone.
Correct.
Versus out here on West Broad or on Front Street where we have food trucks that come during lunch and those times. I mean, that would be a commercial zone. One of the biggest proposed changes in this mobile food vending code that we see in the draft today is the change from 3 a.m. to 2 a.m. Could you talk a little bit about how that number was selected and how it would impact the Division of Support Services?
Chair Remy, 2 years ago, actually, we first met with police when they brought to us the issues they were having in the short north, especially with the drag racing and the motorcycles and the ATVs. And it was discussed then that maybe if the food vendors could close a little earlier, that would have impact on that. 2 o'clock was discussed at that point. I think that's what went into the original draft and just stayed. As for impact on my staff and support services, we would still have to either change our hours or work overtime to go out and work those hours, but we'd just get home a little earlier.
And I think I probably am going to ask for Deputy Chief Smith. Where are you going to be speaking on behalf of police? Okay, why don't you guys come on up? So I feel like you're way back there and I can't ask questions, but I want you guys to speak a little bit, because some of the arguments are that, they provide food. This is going to be a damage to their business because those are some of the peak hours. And so I want to be cognizant of that and understand, from the police perspective, what the concerns that you share in this regard, and certainly hear more from your side of the story.
Thank you, Chair Remy. Starting in 2020 and 2021, at that time I was the commander for Zone 5, which encompasses downtown and the Short North. There had been a couple incidents in the Short North and throughout the city that had been what we considered exacerbated by the presence of the food carts after hours. And one of the things we were noticing was, as the liquor establishments were letting out, people weren't leaving. They were going from the liquor establishment to the food cart, wherever that was. And the lines would become quite lengthy, and the crowds would stay out on the street until, roughly 3 in the morning, 3:30, which really hurt our traffic flow in terms of, at bar close, we're trying to get people out into their parking lots, into their ride shares, and home in a safe manner. There were times where there were traffic problems because lines were stretching out into the street or blocking the sidewalks. We had some fights that started, and there were 2 instances, I believe, if I remember correctly, in which, gunfire had erupted that resulted from an altercation that escalated, while people were in line. Now, that's not to say that the food cart vendors were the causation of, those altercations. But when we look at hotspots, when we look at, crime problems, we're looking at people, places, behavior. What are the, when we start looking at locations, what are the factors that, take place or that contribute to, what's going on and what's causing that to become a hotspot. And that's where we start looking at how can we take down the temperature a little bit of that, that area. If those food cart vendors closed at 2 o'clock as opposed to 3, we might have a better ability to get our traffic in and out in a safe manner earlier than what we were seeing. In addition, if people were that hungry that they wanted to come out and get food from the food cart, they would leave the bar a little bit earlier, and then maybe that would kind of water down the end of the night, the closing, like 2:30 a.m. traffic that we're seeing. Not everybody's coming out of the bar at once. It's more of a trickle effect as opposed to all at one time. So that's one of the reasons why when we were brainstorming for some of the regulations, we talked about that.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. This could go to either one of you, but as it stands today, 3 a.m., is that the time, just for clarification's sake, is that the time that somebody could take the last order, or is that the time they need to be packing up and heading on out as a food vendor? And then talk about what 2 a.m. means. Is it the same, definition? I want to understand that.
Thank you, Chair Remy. 3 o'clock currently is the time they have to be shut up and off the streets, which means when this was initially enacted in original code, it was hoping that at 2:30 they would have sold their last food item and would start closing up to get out of there. 2 o'clock would just move that back an entire hour, so they would have to be off the street by 2 o'clock, which means 1:30 would be the last that they could sell anything in order to get out of there in time by 2.
This is just maybe an opinion question, but, we hear people say, there are so many people waiting for their Ubers at that time. And, that's a lot of times why people congregate. Could you speak to that a little bit? I mean, maybe just your opinion, but I want to understand that. We've created some zones, I believe, in the Short North for pickup and drop off. Ask your opinion on that as far as, is that from your perspective, those of you that are in the area, is that working? Is that not working? And does that contribute to the amount of people that are in the area congregating?
Chair Remy, I will offer my opinion, but it's dated, so I'll defer to the sergeants that might have more recent experience. The last time I was out, working the streets At those hours, the ride shares were more spread out because not everybody went to the same spot, or they would move to a separate location to wait for their ride share. So it wasn't as concentrated as a line, but again, I'll defer to Sergeant Mancini and Sergeant Lepla to say kind of how it's working in practice now.
Councilman, as far as that question, I believe the designated areas are helpful. It does help with the visitors, the patrons, to kind of move to certain areas for pickup. You'll see less congregation in parking lots where their vehicles would be parked. They're just waiting along the side or near that area for their ride share, which has been helpful. From the time that I've been down there on foot, for direct patrol for a few months when they asked us to. It was very helpful to see people leave, going to one place, and then kind of hanging in an area for a ride or to be picked up. So to answer that question, that has been helpful, to have designated areas for their pickup and to allow the traffic to safely pull over for a pickup so other vehicular traffic can continue north or south or east or west.
I've noticed in researching other cities, I mean, there's some, 2 o'clock seems to be very consistent with other large cities. I'm also looking at things like, Chicago requiring GPS to be installed on food carts and mobile, trucks. Certainly, sometimes there's limitations on only 2 hours of operation and, just different varying things throughout different cities, because it's interesting to compare notes to see what we're doing. It seems like we're a lot more liberal in the way that we apply our rules in Columbus, Ohio, but we're also, I'm not trying to make us Chicago either. So did you look and did you consider other cities as you were refining and researching, some of these amendments that you're proposing this evening?
Chairman Remy, we did not. We did actually lean heavily on the idea of a reservation system that would mark spaces or locations, and people would have to reserve for those so that there are still food services available. The reservation system won't let a person monopolize the spot, so it gets spread around somewhat. I can't remember exactly what it is, but they can't do it 2 nights in a row. So it does kind of spread the wealth. And then for enforcement purposes, having the reserved spaces certainly helps us, because it makes it very clear if they're not in a reserved space, the space that they reserved, then they have to close up and go out and be gone.
And the current vendor, Street Food Finder, is able to accommodate the reservation system outside of the public right-of-way?
Chairman Remy, that's correct. It would just be a matter of letting him know where the new reservation spots are, and he would add them to his map and to his software, and then it would be opened up for signing up in the reservation system by the vendors.
And so when they get a permit at the beginning of the year, that allows them then to make those reservations throughout the year with the no 2 nights in a row, that type of thing. But they're allowed to do that, no additional fee. It's all included in that original permit fee, correct?
I can't say that there's, I think they do pay a fee to use the reservation system.
Okay. Let me see here. What other questions I have written down? Assistant Health Commissioner Edward Johnson, good evening. How would a change in hours impact CPH?
As far as our involvement in the process, we have engaged with public safety, beg your pardon, to do food inspections at certain intervals to ensure that the Ohio Uniform Food Safety Code has been adhered to, but we are not consistently on a regular basis, week to week, as that case may be, engaging in kind of food inspection. So it would be complaint driven, and then also engaging in the task forces as public safety would request our presence. So not a great deal of impact with the hours changed.
Thank you. and I see Linda Bickerstaff from the city attorney's office. How would a change in hours impact the city attorney's office or issues that have arose from that 3 a.m. timeframe? I mean, obviously you were anticipating the changes helping in certain ways.
From the city attorney's office, we would simply continue to work with the licensing section, lending whatever type of legal analysis and support that would be required. Therefore, it would be little to no impact on the city attorney's office.
Thank you. I believe Justin Goodwin's here. I see you there. You can come up too. I'm just all about full engagement tonight. Our new parking, you give me your title now.
Good evening, Chair Remy. My title is Administrator for Mobility and the Division of Mobility and Parking and Public Service.
Excellent. Are there currently food trucks spots available within the, I'm talking specifically in the right-of-way, within the Short North area? Let's just talk in particular.
There are designated locations, and that is one difference between the food trucks and the push carts or mobile food vending carts is those would not be operating on the street in one of those designated parking areas, but there would be designated areas off behind the curb at sidewalk level for food carts.
And from your observation today, I mean, in the role that you're in now, has that system been working well in the right-of-way and the reservation system in particular?
Yes, in discussing with my staff, we found that to work well. It's provided an organized solution to providing that service. We've certainly seen a change since COVID and changing patterns in food truck, the food truck business model, and actually have seen some of the actual food truck activity decrease, but more of the increase in the push carts, the mobile food vending carts.
Will you be working together in potentially identifying places for food carts, or is that out of your purview? In your
certainly, we're happy to work with our other departments and with other stakeholders. In fact, just had a conversation with the Short North Association yesterday about potential locations, and we'll be working to make sure that those make sense from a Department of Public Service perspective and aren't blocking the sidewalk and creating ADA issues and those sorts of considerations.
Okay. Well, I thank all of you for answering my questions this evening. I'm sure others will arise. But again, this is an ongoing conversation. So we will, continue to discuss these proposed amendments, hear from our speakers this evening, of course, and then regroup and work together as we work towards a finalized version of what the new code will be sometime in January or February. We do have we have 9 speakers this evening and have received 8 speakers this week and have received 3 pieces of written testimony. I'm going to go ahead and call you up, and as you come up, if you would state your name, address, and any organization that you represent, you will have 3 minutes to speak. I will tell you who's up next, so please be prepared. Our first speaker is Adam Wallace, and then Tyler Pule.
Hello, my name is Adam Wallace. In 2020, during the pandemic, several restaurants sued the city of Columbus, including Mikey's Late Night Slice, Penn's Mechanical Company, 16-Bit Arcade, and Oddfellows. In short, they were fighting against time. Being forced to close by 10 p.m., they submitted data showing how greatly their individual businesses were affected and indicated that the financial damage would not be repairable. Data that shows that being forced to close earlier would destroy their businesses, which is one of the primary reasons for their suit. We are all thankful that the bulk of the pandemic is over, but now food cart and food truck owners are being put in situations that aren't a national health emergency. Because of a small population of people making poor choices and choosing to handle themselves poorly, the city has chosen to shift blame on parties that really do come in peace. Food carts and violence do not go hand in hand. Decades of peaceful operation cannot be overlooked or undone by the actions of a few. Hundreds of thousands of euros sold without incident. I have never seen legislation that so blatantly targets a specific industry, mobile food vending. Perhaps the city is not aware that the majority of food cart operators are minorities. This legislation proposal stands to disrupt hundreds of minority-owned businesses with zero data supporting that food carts and violence are a thing as we look to bigger cities that have thousands of vendors that operate peacefully. 2 a.m. closing with restrictive locations will end this business model for many. 2 a.m. really means 1:35 a.m. as it's written off the street by 2 a.m. or be targeted or charged with a first-degree misdemeanor, as we're criminals for selling food. Where is the Mobile Food Vending Board? Currently disbanded by the City of Columbus because of the pandemic. Yet here we are having major discussions being considered regarding mobile food vending with a board that is not currently in operation, and that doesn't even make any sense. There used to be actual discussions, not 3 minutes, and it honestly doesn't make sense to have this type of meeting or these type of conversations without the food board being back in active standing. In regards to congestion zones, each push cart is congestion zone proof, as there are specific sizes required by the code, 4 by 6, with a minimum passengers that have at least 5 feet in front of the food cart to walk safely before and back of the food carts. That's in the existing code. And with the city, the congestion is caused by people waiting for rides to get home, and by the city approving so many bars with high capacity being open in close proximity one to another, and then those people all come out around the same time. The proposed changes regarding the reservation system have been in the existing code since 2014, yet never implemented. 2 reservation systems were to be added, but only 1 was ever created. Does it take 8 years for someone to do their job? I've heard that there's no actual data this morning or this evening, that there's been no actual research done by the City of Columbus, yet we're having this meeting trying to say that food carts and violence are hand in hand. Honestly, I wish this meeting were brought to a halt until the food board was put back online, to where we can have actual discussions where we don't have 3 minutes to talk about stuff, but have actual conversations that, hey, we understand their issues, here are the solutions, not a legislative change. This can be remedied just by a simple conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Assistant Director Collins, talk to us about the food board. Is it currently meeting? Is it not? When is it going to be reconstituted if it's not today?
Chair Remy, there has not been a meeting since I went to support services in 2019, and even I think quite a bit sooner than that. Maybe 2017, I believe, was the last meeting. People have left positions. Some city appointments have left positions. There was many reasons why it just didn't meet. Our intent is, as soon as this passes, we're going to start meeting even ahead of the enforcement date to get those positions filled and get the board back up and running. Some of the problems is it just took so long to get a reappointment before as well, because it had to go to the mayor's office and city council concurrence. So hopefully we can speed that up and get that filled as soon as possible. We did take some really difficult positions that were in there to fill and streamline those. And then we also did away with the elections, which took quite a bit of time. When the board, I think that the intent of the elections was for the original board.
Okay, thank you very much. Tyler Puhle and then Khalid Shahidi.
Good evening, Councilmember Remy and all here. My name is Tyler Puhle. I'm speaking on behalf of the wood companies and as a resident of Victorian Village. Currently regulations need to be amended to create a safer atmosphere and a better quality of life. It's no secret that the Short North is in the midst of a safety crisis. And this mobile food cart vending is not a silver bullet, but it is a piece of the puzzle. In the view of the wood companies, food carts should be limited to midnight. we feel that that is a good time to allow some late night action, but like we've all always heard, nothing good happens after midnight. We feel that drunk people, when they leave bars, they need a place to go, and it needs to be out of the neighborhood. One thing that gets lost in this is this, while it's a great pedestrian zone, it's a great commercial zone, it is also the densest residential area in the city of Columbus. These are people who, want their streets to be clean and safe and not overly loud after a certain hour. And then the other problem that hasn't been mentioned yet is the under 21 crowd. Something that I've been told this summer and have seen, there's a under 21 crowd that focuses on really lingering in the neighborhood. That is much, they're not going into the bars, but they're congregating around these food carts. And there's been violence stemming from those under 21 stemming from the food carts. And I appreciate the last speaker's impassioned stance. And I don't think it's a then B. I think it's a piece of the puzzle in which, the last thing anyone wants to do is to significantly hurt a business. But I think that there's also a focus that this is a residential neighborhood more than it is anything else. And I agree that there are too many bars in one area, but that's for a different time. Another piece that should be focused on is the concentration of reservation spaces in front of problematic bars. There was a shooting outside of a food cart at Seesaw that went into our building where North Star Cafe is. That was from under 21-year-olds that were congregating a food cart at 4 a.m. That's a specific example of what the problem this causes. Another point that has been mentioned is cleanup procedures. The city and property owners and taxpayers spent a lot of money creating this new streetscape, and we're finding that the grease isn't properly disposed of, the sidewalks are stained, and as someone who wants to walk his son in a stroller the next day, it really doesn't feel great to see grease from the night before in a neighborhood. That's exploitative. That's not being a good community member. And then the last thing is, we've all seen that the Short North situation can change rather quickly. Giving the director powers needed to change the hours of operation as circumstances change would be a step in the right direction. So if we do see some safety crunch over the next summer, having the director have the ability to pull hours back in kind of a temporary measure would be a good step forward. So thank you for listening to me, and look forward to being part of the solution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pugh. Appreciate your testimony this evening. We now have Khalid Shahidi. Is Mr. Shahidi in the audience? Okay, don't recognize that. Now I have Moatez Obana. Victor Dabbs. Betsy Pandora. I see you. And then right after that, we have Jason Henry, FYI.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Remy. Thank you so much. And my name is Betsy Pandora. I'm the Executive Director of the Short North Alliance. Our offices are at 1181 Mount Pleasant Avenue. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this hearing process and the really important safety and quality of life concerns that are emerging in our city. When it comes to regulations on mobile food vending in the city of Columbus, we agree that there are opportunities to strengthen the code that benefit all, and we really appreciate that the city in good faith is working on meaningful adjustments. In reflecting on some of the feedback that we heard in the previous hearing and even heard further presented today and some of the proposed changes, we wanted to just offer a few comments to inform what maybe happens next. These comments have been shared and informed through conversations that we've led with businesses and property owners, including our board and our Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Council in the Short North Arts District. That's a group of stakeholders that represent diverse backgrounds and perspectives who really assist in informing our work around inclusivity in the Short North. Mobile food vendors are an important business segment in our city, and they need support. And we're glad to see that the changes proposed consider their success and balance safety and quality of life support in a congestion zone like the Short North. I think it's important to acknowledge, though, that we have experienced some issues in terms of violence, and there is real merit, I think, to a suggestion that there could be an administrative procedure included within the proposal that maybe helps to further modify certain issues in congestion zones, times, operations, and other standards. Building a process like that into the code from the get-go could allow for adjustments to those things to happen within the permit year and within the permit cycle without having to wait, and really be responsive to the conditions that communities are experiencing when needed safety prevention measures are necessary. The existing system that guides operations of mobile food truck vendors operating in the Short North congestion zone, for example, designates spaces, and it outlines operating requirements, and it requires advanced registration. It works really, really well. We have not experienced cleanliness, safety, or other quality of life challenges specific to mobile food truck vendors where these operating requirements have been followed. And we think that the same system has merit to apply to all, and it's a great suggestion as the city has put out to make that modification. To avoid further congestion in our community, and certainly many other communities could see benefit from it, any form of mobile food vending really needs to occur in designated spaces with advanced registrations. And what we've really found is that the sidewalks on High Street, in particular in the Short North congestion zone, truly just are not ideal locations for this. Many of them are actually in conflict with the majority of the code at present, and it really creates challenges. As has been the case with food truck operations, the Short North Alliance believes that any vendor who operates needs to have clear expectations and operating standards that address cleanliness and safety and help to support their success. And we really appreciate how much time the city has invested in this effort, and we look forward to continuing to be a partner.
Thank you very much, Betsy. We appreciate your testimony this evening. Jason Henry, and then Chaz Kaplan.
My name is Jason Henry. I'm a resident of Victorian Village. Thank you, Councilman Remy, for understanding the concerns the community has related to the mobile food vending and for spending the time to propose these amendments to the code. These changes are important and necessary to maintain quality of life to the many residents of the Short North. I would agree with Mr. Poole that the mobile food vendors are not the solution to the issues facing the Short North, but they are a piece of the puzzle, and that's, every little bit helps. Designating locations for vending and requiring reservations for these locations is critical and should help to avoid the free-for-all that is often the case late night on High Street. This should also decrease the likelihood that sidewalks and streets are blocked by vendor patrons. I would ask the council consider that the requiring of reservations for mobile food vending sites at all hours and not just late night. The proposal to reduce hours for mobile food vendors from 3 a.m. to 2 a.m. is a great start and much appreciated. But I would also ask council to consider restricting mobile food vending operations to 1 a.m. instead of 2 a.m. Common sense and the crime statistics show that large crowds gathered in the Short North late at night is a recipe for problems. Once again, agreeing with Mr. Poole, we need to have the ability, the city needs to have the ability to act quickly. So I would say that the Director of Public Safety should have the authority to make short-term changes to the hours of operations based on issues experienced in the Short North throughout the year in real time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Henry. And then Chaz Kaplan.
Thank you, Councilmember Remy. Chaz Kaplan, I'm the owner of the Columbus Food Truck Festival, was also one of the original vendors for the City of Columbus Mobile Food Program in 2013, 14, 15. We worked extremely hard on finding all the parking locations. The objective of the program originally was to create this vibrancy of the mobile food program, mobile food industry, sorry. And I believe that we did that. And for some reason, since 2016, we've kind of lost that touch a little bit. Obviously, with the growth of the city, traffic, the noise, all of the things that are going on, there's a bigger problem at hand, and it's the growth that happens everywhere. The problem with the bars, when they clear out at 2:30 of the rideshare, we talked about that. Rideshare is probably the #1 problem. There is no designated area. I'm down in the Short North probably every other weekend, hanging out, get an Uber. I try to get out of there by 1 a.m. because I don't want to be there too. But we get out, hit the Uber or the Lyft. They're lost. There's no designated area. There absolutely should be. There should be an easy egress out of the Short North, whether that area be on Goodale or on Fifth Avenue. That would help. You would lead traffic of people walking down the street to those areas. I think it'd be easier policed. As far as the mobile food vendors go, shutting them down at 1:30 is going to cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've worked with pretty much every mobile food vendor in the city of Columbus since 2011 and helped them make millions and millions of dollars for small business owners in town. This is going to hurt them a lot. The hours that, I don't think it's been discussed, but the hours that go into working a 2 or 3 hour shift is actually more like 6 or 7 hours because they have to prep, they have to clean, they have to organize, get ready, and then they have to do the same thing at the end of the shift. To do that for 500 hours and then cut them off at 1:30 and then they're going to lose another $1,500, $2,000 after that, that's problematic. I wanted to touch on the mobile food board at some point. When that was originally happening in 2013 through 2016, I believe Ramona Patz was the director of public safety at that time. It went really well, except there was a number of members from the Columbus, Ohio Food Truck Association that were on the board, and they also helped create Street Food Finder. So there was an immediate conflict of interest. Street Food Finder is based out of San Francisco, which is out of state. I think that's another problem is the accountability factor. There's no local accountability involved with the mobile food vendors. I have brought that to the city. I continue to bring it to Ohio State University with my reservation program. It seems to be working well as Ohio State just re-upped the agreement with me for another 10 years. So again, I know it says a minute and a half, but I was speaking a minute prior to that, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'd love to be a member of the new mobile vending board, if you would have me. Try to give my input where I can, as well as maybe take a look at my reservation system again as well, so we can bring back that local flavor along with the vibrancy to the city. So, thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaplan. We appreciate your testimony this evening. Moatez Albana. Please state your name, any business you're associated with, and your address. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Motaz Albana. I'm a food cart owner, mobile food vendors. As we read the proposal, it's unfair to vote for it. It is unfair to vote for the proposal will serve one party only without taking any consideration how we will survive if this proposal approved. The proposal enforces us to close at 2 a.m. despite our main income between 2 and 3 a.m. Threatening us to get first-degree misdemeanor for the violation. No mobile cart allowed on the street from 2 a.m. till 6 a.m. So we have to disappear before 2 a.m. to stay out of jail, or up to $1,000 penalty. That's totally unfair. This completely singled us out of our mobile restaurants. The proposal only applied to this mobile restaurants, not regular restaurants. All regular restaurants does not have any obligation to close in certain time, despite they have the same crowd after 2 a.m. They can open and close whenever they want, but mobile restaurants cannot do so. We will lose more than 80% of our income. Can any one of this family survive with 20% of income? And it will put us and our employees on leave. Can you imagine how many families will lose their income? They did not think about that when they wrote that proposal. Without any source of data or fair information, the city of Columbus wants us to be forced to close at 2 a.m. and lose our businesses? Can the city of Columbus enforce the restaurants selling pizza and tacos till 6 a.m. to close at 2 a.m.? Can they enforce bars who get people intoxicated and leading to the violence that is occurring to close at 2 a.m.? Of course, the answer is no. Nothing points to the food cart as the source of the problem, but the city wants to blame us for the violation. What other places has health, fire, or city inspect every month, unless they are looking for any reason to shut us down? Why there is a focus mainly in Short North area? Is it a pressure from the Short North Alliance to exit us out of the Short North? Who is benefiting from taking us out of our businesses and need us to shut down early, then shut down for good? We are innocent from the blame, and it is unfair to look for any excuse to vote with this proposal. We are asking for fairness, justice, and equality. As far as you know, sir, we are mostly Middle Eastern and immigrants, and all of us has accents while we speak English, but here as the city, all this wisdom people, we ask for fairness and justice and equality and look for the true data and the true reason for that proposal, which will serve one side or one party only. We need a proposal to serve all parties fairly. We said before the solution to solve this problem is increasing the police presence and adding more security to the bars. And without any restriction of any hours or our way to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albano. We appreciate your testimony this evening. I believe that Assistant Health Commissioner Edward Johnson has a comment to make about the grease.
Yes, thank you, Chair Remy. I wanted to make sure that I was clear in response to Mr. Poole. If he is experiencing food carts that are ejecting the grease from their grease traps onto the streets, that is a violation of the Ohio Uniform Food Safety Code. And that's the type of violation that we would love to have reported to us at Columbus Public Health via the 311 system, because that is endangering a food license, and that's creating a public health hazard and or nuisance potentially when you're not following the food code, when you're not emptying your grease traps appropriately. And so that is something that we would be very interested in hearing from the community.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions before I close out this hearing? All right, then. Well, I thank everyone for their testimony this evening. And those that joined us for our second public hearing on the mobile food vending, we will continue to review the mobile food vending legislation and proposed amendments, and we'll schedule stakeholder meetings in January to discuss more in depth the concerns and ideas of various stakeholders before reviewing a final draft in 2023. Thank you to Assistant Administrator Kathy Collins for your presentation and leadership in this effort. And thank you to Edward Johnson, Justin Goodwin, Linda Bickerstaff, Deputy Chief Smith-Weir, Sergeant Lepla, Sergeant Mancini, and Sergeant Kermode for their, well, Sergeant Kermode wasn't here, but thank you for everybody else that was. Thank you to the council team members who made today's hearing possible, Lucy Frank, John Oswald, Nia Hairston, and Mark Carter, and to the CTV team for their assistance in preparing for this hearing. And last but not least, thank you to the public speakers, folks who submitted written testimony, and viewers for taking time out of their busy day to participate. I hope you all stay safe and have a great evening. Happy holidays, everyone. This concludes our hearing.